introduction, Professor Esra Almas from Bilkent University in Turkey. Dr. Esra Almas researches memory studies, diaspora, urban imaginary, focusing on Jewish memories of Istanbul through sensory experiences. He has taught at the universities of Amsterdam, Leiden, and Istanbul, Shehir, and held fellowships at the Katz Center, University of Pennsylvania, as you know, and Netherlands Institute in Turkey. Holds a PhD from Amsterdam School for Cultural Analysis, currently works on projects about Jewish in the modern Middle East and modern Turkish language at the Neubert Collegium. Today he is going to deal with the inscribing Jewish lives into the fabric of the city. Please, Professor Almas.
Thank you very much for this very kind invitation. And thank you very much for this very kind introduction as well. I'm just trying to share my screen right now. Okay. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm having some difficulty sharing my screen. Okay. Oh, sorry. This is the last one. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much again. Thank you very much for staying this late. I timed it for 15 minutes. It won't be long again. Thank you again for this very kind invitation, and I would also like to extend my thanks to Alisa Abramova, especially for responding to my last-minute questions, concerns. And in this, as I said, short talk, I'm hoping to share with you Jewish women's memory writing in modern Turkey, but actually especially in Istanbul, about which we have been talking about. So I'll talk, of course, about the modern Istanbul and the modern city, which is associated with loss and erasure, and Istanbul is no exception. Its fraught histories in the 20th century and hypertrophic transformation in the 21st turned it into a megalopolis of mythic proportions. So in Istanbul, self-orientation, exile, and belonging are the primary concerns of locals and foreigners alike. Memoirs with emphasis on cultural geographies provide insights into how writing shapes the self, space, and the community in response to the problem of self-orientation. Situated at the intersections of the personal and the public, the local and the foreign, the center and the periphery, life writing may incorporate diverse forms of homelessness, including the ones at home. And when written from the margins and questioning the sense of home and belonging, autobiography may become a political gesture. Recent work on Jewish experience in Turkey by women writers place emphasis on collective memory through intergenerational writing. Retrospective but not nostalgic, narration of women's untold stories across the century reclaims a difference once disowned. Longing without belonging, they reveal a range of affective responses that constituted the feeling of home, the pain of separation, the mental and emotional landscapes, and their representation in writing. And here, perhaps, I'm just here using an image from the Quincentennial Museum's website, which is showing us Schneider Temple. Of course, it's an earlier image from the Ashkenaz synagogue, now a museum, of course, in Tunnel. And so maybe with this, a little bit talk about nuances and feelings, and maybe a little note on the Turkish Jews, especially Turkish women, especially. So how to define it? And in that sense, I thought, I would think that it could be, we could approach them as Atatürk's children. At least that's how the late writer and activist Maurice Farhi, who was born in Ankara, Dahan, and then moved to the UK, referred to himself and his generation, Atatürk's children. So, and how that links to the Jewish women of Republican Turkey is, of course, the great women's rights, and that women were given precedence, of course, as long as they spoke Turkish and conformed to the ideal, and as long as they prioritized or accentuated their Turkishness. And that's mostly what we would sort of have, and especially with earlier writing. And this is not exclusive to the Jewish women necessarily. So, but coming back to especially Jewish women, and we're talking about mostly about the Sephardi, the majority. This was, of course, not that easy because of language barriers. We talk about like living in insulated islands, isolated due to language barrier. And then for those who moved beyond, another obstacle was the overall tendency to remain silent, kayades, and conform to the idea of a loyal nation. And the myth of benevolence, as we have already talked about, Dr. Öneren Özbek talked about also in her talk. So when we look at women's writing, Jewish women, Muslim women, writing about themselves in the modern age. They, of course, wrote about topics that concerned women and men during this period. Nationalism, modernity, militarism, diaspora, identity, class. So, in that sense, what I would like to look at, how I'm approaching this, that sense, and taking my cue from Orit Bashkin as well, and from a host of different writers, is to look at it to have a relational understanding of feminism, or a definition of feminism as a site of contradictory positions. And with that, I would like to, let's move on to my first example. Who are you, Jacques Samanon? Just in 1997. So, in Kimsin Jacques Samanon? Cultural historian, translator, and novelist Lizbe Moras tells the story of Jewish commitment to Ottoman modernization through her grandmother Adel Samanon's memories of her childhood. Through these memoirs, Moras also traces the life of Jacques Samanon, who we see. The cover page, Adel's father, an Ottoman civil servant and fervent supporter of imperial citizenship. Let me take a little bit of time in talking about this image. So we see a blurred portrait of a man in a fez, partly masked by Hebrew and Arabic scripts. And of course on the top in a white font, we see the title and the writer's name in Turkish script, the Latin alphabet, the writer's name. So the indistinctness of the man's face creates a sense of mystery, with the photograph haunting the page beneath the multiple scripts. The different languages used on the cover also evokes the multi-scribal past of the Ottoman Empire, a period before Hebrew and Arabic scripts would say, I'd say disappeared, but mostly disappeared. Of course, there were exceptions from the market in 1928 in favor of Latinization, a key moment in Republican language reforms. But Moras' reconstruction of her grandmother's family story orchestrates the city's myriad sounds and spaces as they are encased in a girl's memory, Adel, that is the girl, thereby accentuating the soundscape or the totality of noises, voices, melodies, and languages that shape the urban world of Sephardi Jews. Bringing Jewish lives in Ottoman Istanbul into focus, the narrative provides glimpses of their everyday world. Shifting between history and literature and between different languages, including French and Ladino, and occasional Hebrew, of course, Moras' narrative provides an unusual account of Jewish commitment to the modernization of the Ottoman Empire during its twilight. And she does so in 1990s, at a moment when Turkey was grappling with its imperial, Ottoman, and Jewish pasts. It was in fact published in 1997, which of course follows the worldwide commemoration in 1992 of the quincentennial of the expulsion of Jews from Spain and Portugal, and their welcoming by the early modern Ottoman Empire. But here, about all of this, just a little note on this publishing. It's 97, the date follows it, but the it's published with Sel Yayıncılık, a niche publishing company could say, and which makes this work rather exceptional in the context of Turkish literature of the period. Literary biographies and memoirs were still relatively uncommon in the period in Turkish literature. So for this, of course, I'll talk about some exceptions, but one could be the memoirs published in the period by the designer, of course, the owner, founder of Vakko, Vitaly Hakko, My Life, Hayatım, first in Turkish, and translated into English as My Life, published in 2010. And then the playwright Beki Behar, whom I'll refer to in a minute, but maybe I should refer to it right now. Okay, let's just go to this. Okay, so here we have Beki Behar and Ros Cohen. I'm sort of like moving on a little bit, but please keep in mind that I'm actually also like referring to this in relation to Lisbeth Morris's text. And in the sense that Lisbeth Morris's text was basically geared for the general Turkish public, general Turkish audience. And as were earlier interviews with Turkish intellectuals and Turkish Jews published with the same publishing company in '96. So there is a moment about the target audience is perhaps like a little bit different from Beki Behar's work, which is, of course, maybe also earlier. Here we have Çıfıt Çarşısı, the Jewish bazaar. Çıfıt, a word of Persian origin, used to refer to Jews. Nowadays it's only used to refer to confusing bazaars, markets. There's one in Balat, for example, which we heard about. And then, of course, as I said, sort of like to go with this trend. Of course, Lisbeth Morris is not the one, and there are quite a number of research, quite a number of memoirs, memoir writing since then. Another example, of course, is like to salute Ros Cohen, Ros Cohen's work, especially her two series of Jewish Istanbul, which you see is also written in Ladino, which also include an intergenerational perspective of the Istanbul she grew up and the Istanbul of the earlier traditions. But here, again, I would also like to point to the publishing company Libra as well. So perhaps, even though Libra has expanded its audience, so there are all these little nuances in terms of the publishing world here. But to go back to memoirs from a more theoretical perspective, so conjoining archival and ethnographic impulses, narratives document the communities and their cultures, reinscribing lost lifestyles in the political, economic, and cultural fabric of the city, the country, and the region. Focusing on the ambivalences of the conflictual and convivial practices of coexistence, the narration of women's untold stories reclaims the difference once disowned. An exploration of the self through the community, the memoirs are cultural critiques and affirmations of pluralism. They express conflict, critique, parody, and resistance in terms of the tensions between the self and society. Motivated by an effort to salvage one's own vanishing cultures, memoirs share it with a wider and possibly international audience, especially here, as is the case with Ros Cohen's work. And they also note to the importance of rhetoric as a mode of cognition and as a constituent of cultural and historical continuities. Let me go further a little bit more and introduce different examples. And here is another one. So they're now like read more newer cases. And one is, of course, Rita and Dad. So family heirlooms is sort of this title which came in 2018, and it was actually, this succeeds an early work called İsmiyle Yaşamak, To Live with One's Name, published in 2016, again with İlyas İşin, the same publishing company, which explores the material and affective component of Jewish identity in contemporary Turkey. So with this one, family heirlooms consist of interviews with 30 young members of the Turkish Jewish community on what they consider their family heirlooms, what they inherited from their family, and what they would like to pass on to their children. See, the results are varied, including objects of everyday use. So here again, what we look at is the representation of the everyday, which highlights the question of value. What makes an object significant is the story associated with it. Then everyday objects turn habits into objects of contemplation. Another one, again, this time, as you see, being Jewish in Turkey, a dictionary of experience, Türkiye'de Yahudi olmak, edited this time a dictionary, but the editors are mother and daughter, and they work together, Aylen Kuryel and Rachel Messevi, and also again focusing on the experience of Jewish identity. And here, informed by the transnational and transregional experience of Jewishness, the dictionary questions the commonplace definitions of identity, while at the same time brings them a fresh approach through anecdotal memories. Some of them those anecdotes I will share a little bit later. Okay? But if we want to focus on experience as a form of acquiring and sharing information, what we have is access to information not included in historiography. This includes what memory distorts and shapes, or the choices of memory. Accounts of experience include affect, revealing forms of attachment and affinity. Perhaps, by the way, but again, like looking at more or less the same thing. This time it's not not a book, but a documentary. So maybe sort of like see it as like a prequel to a kulüp. This is, of course, by no means the only documentary on Turkish Jews, but this was Kaybolan Birdi, Kaybolan Mutfak. So you sort of again like look at the idea of this nostalgic understanding of the past, the fading language, of fading cuisine, and it was also at least nationally very much acknowledged. Especially, it was part of the official selection of Istanbul Film Festival. It was produced. And now, more recently, Suzanna Trablos, again, this is published by Varlık Yayınları, again, one of the very oldest publishing houses of Republican Turkey. And these are Nana Trablos's interviews with the members of Istanbul's Jewish communities based on the neighborhoods they felt they belonged to. So, when you see Çekkayı Balata, Hayatlar, Tanıklıklar, Anılar, Oarsman, Take Me to Balat, and then again we have another image here of Bir Sabah Galata'da uyandım. I woke up one morning in Galata. Of course, the images, the areas that sort of we know. These are not the only ones. There's also more. Also about Kuzguncuk, another one. So what we have, the third one, as I said, the trilogy is about Kuzguncuk, so it's my journey in Kuzguncuk across generations. But what we have with this is, of course, the Jewish communities of the metropolis, all of them subtitled Lives, Testimonies, Memories. But what we see here, of course, what Miss Sarina Roff explained to us very elegantly in her previous slide. It's again the same thing, that there are multiple neighborhoods that have synagogues, and that the Jewish communities are spread through the city. We see it through synagogues, and now we see it also through these memoirs, or we could say life writing. So what do we see? So slowly to come towards the vision. And here again, another image from Galata. So what do we see? How do we see Jewish past, Jewish traces? And maybe by looking at closely, just like this panel by an apartment close to Galata Tower, again, typical area. And here you may sort of like see the name Aseo. It's also again the name of the surname of the protagonist of Kulüp. No, this is not her apartment, but this is again a common name. And you also here, I circled this again, you see the Hebrew inscription. So these all, if you sort of look closely, what do you see? And of course, what we see is, of course, that it sort of surrounds the Ottoman alphabet. So I see women's memoirs as this. inscription, perhaps adding to the multidirectionality of Istanbul's memories. And multidirectionality is, of course, a term I borrow from Michael Rothberg as memories that pluralize and politicize remembrance. So through emphasis on dialogue and diversity, memoirs may challenge unitary visions, evoke the perils and potential of coexistence, and multiply the voices of the city, and sometimes the alphabets here, as here we see, of the city. And memory narratives provide a unique lens to review the policies and practices that promoted conviviality, but also precipitated its loss. And women's writing across generations is not simply description, it's re-inscription of Jewish presence, Jewish lives in the fabric of the city. So this barely visible script, again, evokes a sense of home here, evokes a sense of this home. And of course, it will take us to nostalgia, perhaps, which shape our understanding of feelings of loss and absence. And nostalgia itself, it's studying a medical term, but also as a prelapsarian nostalgia, relating to Abrahamic stories of origin, the expulsion from the Garden of Eden and the pain of separation. Nostalgia predicates a sense of a happy home, an involuntary departure, if not expulsion, and the near inability to return. The problem with this understanding of nostalgia is, of course, the idealized home, which is, of course, home is imaginary, and of the mind. Its memory is fragmented, as Salman Rushdie contends in Imaginary Homelands. Homelands are not to be reclaimed. They serve as inspiration, fueling imagination. And here I'd like to, again, refer to Svetlana Boym's seminal work with the concept, playfully entitled The Future of Nostalgia, the late the great Svetlana Boym, which points to the dangers of conflating the actual home with the imaginary one. Longing for lost totality marks the predicament of the modern era and is universal. But the moment this feeling is attached to a distinctive space, it can become a threat. Of course, longing is what we share, and homeland is what can divide us. So again, going back to this, to the conclusion, I said I will refer to the dictionary of our Jewish experience in Turkey. So what is it? So maybe like two things from the everyday Jewish experience in Turkey. You could say maybe today, and how to have doner. You may call shawarma. It's with lemonade or with ayran, which is fleshik and melvik. Right? So it's sort of like how to have it. So here, which is basically what we have in this sense, is that the fundamental difference in seeming or apparent similarity, right? Which is nuance, the addition of lemonade. And as the ultimate, as the final image about Jewish presence in Turkey today, I would like to again end on a more positive note, and this is I wanted to share a ketubah, the exposition of a ketubah in Istanbul's 500-year museum, which was actually first introduced in Schneider Temple. Then this is like my full closure, going back to the image with which I started this talk. So with the Jewish past, again, being exhibited in Schneider Temple, and here you can find this online. You have the addresses online, and they're available. So amidst this hate speech, we also have the art, and we also have a way to present the past, keep the past. And of course, in a way, it works with a more general understanding of Istanbul, because it's a marketing strategy. Obviously, and of course, Turkey's Jewish community has diminished, but its cultural presence and visibility have been significantly raised. And Jewish identity associated with bygone cosmopolitanism has become a major cultural capital, increasingly recycled as part of heritage industry. And Jewish memory work in modern Turkey, I've talked about some memoirs, but here, of course, we could see exhibitions, and there are, of course, second novels. They all conjoin the contrasting experiences associated with the minority position ranging from, as I said, longing and belonging, to alienation and to exclusion. And they also remind us, even today, of the many sides of coexistence, as I'm hoping that these images, ketubas, Sephardi ketubas, illustrates. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much to you for the memories and also the presentation of realities of Jewish presence in Turkey today. Thank you.